What was first just a dream has become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Ahsoka, Episode 6, Far, Far Away. The search for Grand Admiral Thrawn reaches beyond the limits of the galaxy. All right, we finally made it. After what feels like an eternity, I have to tell you, we finally got to see this Grand Admiral Thrawn character they've been talking about. Obviously, I know who he is, but for those who don't know who he is, you finally get to see who he is. You finally got to see this Ezra Bridger character they keep talking about. It was fine. You know, I still am not sure if fans who don't know who these characters are really are going to understand the real true threat here, but the show did do a decent job at recreating them, I have to say, as someone who's watched, most of Rebels and, from Clone Wars and whatnot, seeing these characters come alive, I think was a pretty well done job. Adam, what'd you think overall on this episode?
I really like seeing Thrawn. I think that was, they just did such a great job with it. So, I mean, that's already going to get a couple bonus points for me. But overall, I mean, I think this episode was pretty decent again. Yeah,
I think, again, we had such a high bar set with the last episode,
absolutely.
To where I don't know if you're going to be able to come back from how great that episode was. But this episode, I think, did a really good job of actually continuing the plot that we've been looking for. Because, again, we've kind of said it over. It feels like they've just been artificially inflating the plot up until this point. But now it feels like it's real, right? Now it feels like, okay, the key characters are in play. This is where we're going to move forward, which, again, ironically, it doesn't really feel like an Ahsoka show. It really just feels like a continuation of Rebels, which is...
I mean, especially because she was only in this episode for a few minutes. She got one scene.
Yeah, she had a good scene, which I actually really did enjoy that scene. I'll give him points for that. I think that was really well done, and also another Huang having another fantastic piece of dialogue there. God, David Tennant's really rocking the show for me. He's really selling it. I think there is a lot to enjoy here, though. Again, even if it took a little bit to get here, I think it's starting to really kind of pick up the pace for me, even though it's probably almost over, I think, within 2 episodes. But regardless, Julie, talk to me as someone who's, again, you're probably the one oddball out here, not having seen Rebels. Did this kind of give you anything? If anything, I feel like maybe you got an idea of how terrible Thrawn is just by the guy's presence that he kind of gives.
I did get an idea. I wouldn't say it was exactly what I was looking for. Again, this is someone coming with no background knowledge, and I've been clamoring for both Thrawn and Ezra to have some kind of emotional tether to the show. I guess Thrawn had more of a payoff for me than Ezra, especially to see his interaction with everyone around him, including the people who are supposed to be his allies. Because he makes a couple offhand comments to Balin, all right, well, you're disposable to me. When he sends them to kind of follow Sabine, it's no, they make it back, they make it back. It doesn't really bother me either way.
Yeah.
His mission's pretty much accomplished. He's got everything he needs now. The less people he has, that could possibly betray him, the better. With that being said, I'm still a little underwhelmed, but maybe he just hasn't shown his full power yet. And then for me, Ezra was, again, I have no connection to him. It was a disappointment. I'm okay.
Ezra was off training the Ninja Turtles, in case you were curious.
Those were adorable.
That's what he was doing.
Those were adorable. But it could also just be because Sabine sucks so bad that like she has no chemistry with anybody. So when she does finally reunite with Ezra, that I don't care because she sucks.
All right, let's talk about the plot then, because I guess that's what we're jumping into. Sabine is the issue with the show. I mean, I hate to say it, especially with the way they're writing her character. Adam, I know me and you could talk more about this a little more deeper, but Sabine, to me, she's supposed to be more of like kind of like an arrogant, like not arrogant, maybe like pig-headed kind of character. Like she goes in her own direction. You know, she doesn't really listen to anybody. She kind of marches to the beat of her own drum. She's independent. She's strong. That's not the Sabine that we're getting whatsoever. And I understand, you know, she lost her friend and she's upset, but I'm sorry, the boneheaded decisions I feel like she's made throughout this show just really aren't paying off for me, especially now that she's even gotten to Ezra. I don't know. I don't think the payoff's really that great for me, having gotten here.
It's like she's become more innocent,
right,
as a character as a whole, and I don't know. It just doesn't resonate with me as much as it did with the Rebel show. I don't know. With the Rebel show, she was just so much more of an entertaining character.
Right.
Even before she, got her Force powers in this, series. But I don't know. Maybe she'll fall, especially now that Ezra's back. Maybe it'll reinvigorate her or something like that.
All right, so let's talk about stupidity in the show. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, I don't mean like there's 2 degrees of stupidity. There's a character that's stupid, right? That just is stupid and does stupid things. And then there's characters that are stupid for the sake of the plot. And I feel like that's kind of what we're getting with Sabine here. I don't know if you guys agree with that, where she's making these terrible decisions that seem like very out of character for her. Even if she's desperate to find Ezra, the fact that she even made this deal to begin with to find him, knowing her connection to Ezra and everything like that, I feel like she's just being stupid for the sake of the plot. I never feel like these decisions are really organic to her character, if that makes any sense. Does anybody else have any kind of feedback on that? Because I feel like I don't get it. The Sabine that I even know, even from the beginning of this show, doesn't seem like those are the decisions that she would be making, really.
It's not even that. What bothered me the most about it was if I had to hear her scream one more time, "We had a deal!" Like, you're making a deal with people that are clearly bad guys, and you're surprised that they're not holding up their end of the bargain. So that's just the naivety of her character. Yeah. You would think, okay, or you would hope a character of her skill and caliber that even if she did make a deal with them, she would have a plan of her own about how she was going to kind of one up them. But yeah, she really is just kind of at their mercy whether or not they're going to hold up their end of the bargain.
Right, and that's what's incredibly lacking. There is no backup plan. She literally is just going with their plan, and whatever happens, happens. I think that's incredibly stupid for the plot. That's not just her. That's for the plot.
Yes, and she's lucky that Balin is actually like an honorable character who feels like he does owe her end of the deal.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's interesting too. Another side point here, and we can talk about too, is the lore building is really here in this episode. Adam, I can tell you're excited about that too. We really got some of the Darth Maul subspecies here. We got a little bit of history kind of like tied in there with the witches and whatnot. I thought that was really interesting. Star Wars, when Star Wars is on, is fantastic to me. And I think this episode really captures a lot of that, especially with the way the world is kind of pictured and everything and so on. I think they did a really good job with that.
We're slowly working our way towards something that will recapture my enjoyment of the Star Wars universe.
Right.
It's like bring in the Night Sisters, right?
Right. But yeah, bring them in. Let's do it.
Bring them in. Bring in all that other extra lore. Like that's what I'm waiting for here. That's the more interesting part to me. But the rest of this whole Ezra crap, take it or leave it. But yeah, that stuff is what I want.
Yeah, and it's just the whole Ezra situation, maybe we'll get more information. I don't think we really will, to be honest with you. The fact that Thrawn and Ezra have been on this planet, which, they kind of talk about how this is another universe, right? This is another galaxy. So this is like, there's like 1, 2, 3. This is like galaxy 2 or 3 or whatever it is, say, for example. So they've just kind of been hanging out on that planet, and they never really maybe they did go after each other initially, but then they kind of never did. I don't know. It just seems kind of weird, the whole situation. I don't know. Adam, what do you think on that?
My fear is that we're going to get a whole nother Cad Bane situation.
Oh, God, don't say that.
And this guy's going to come in, set this tone, this precedence that like, hey, I'm here now. I'm here to, mess up your whole world. And then 2 episodes from now, it's just going to be resolved because Ahsoka's going to like stab him right in the chest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of close to something there. Unfortunately, I hope that doesn't happen, but I could definitely see that happening. Ezra, it's interesting. So we finally get to meet Ezra and Sabine have their reunion, and it is nice to see. You know, it is. I feel like Sabine can become a little bit more of her character about there, like joking around, having a good time, like seeing you. That felt like the first time Sabine actually felt like the Sabine character. And again, maybe there is some sort of design there where she's supposed to be kind of like down and out, not herself until she's reunited with her friend. Again, I don't really see her character being that way because I think kind of the biggest thing in Star Wars always is hope, especially from the side of maybe the more rebellious characters where they were going to find that person. And I just, again, the reunion's fine, but then we meet Ezra and I still didn't get much from him. What was he kind of doing there? He's just kind of hanging out, being the cool guy, training the Ninja Turtles, which, they're like rock aliens or whatever they are. But I don't know. I don't think he's going to be happy with Sabine's decision either. Did anybody else kind of feel like that? It's going to be like, you did what? Like, oh, you got me off this planet and now you're going to be setting Thrawn free? I don't know.
It's like all the events that they went through in Rebels.
Yeah, it is.
All the experience that they apparently didn't gain from that entire series and all of, the events that had happened is just completely undone now. It's like nobody is retaining any of their information that they gained from that entire series.
And that's an interesting point you bring up because then, so for new fans, we're getting this for the first time. So we'll be maybe a little bit more forgiving, people who haven't seen that before. But the series is catered primarily towards fans of Rebels. So literally you're telling the same exact story a second time pretty much, right? You're pretty much just not carrying over, like you said, any of the lessons or learned or experience. Kind of like, no, don't worry about it. So who are you really catering for? This show doesn't really know who it wants to cater for to some extent.
Honestly, if they had kept on the trend of just catering to the Rebels fans, I think that we would have gotten a more coherent story. Yeah. But now that they're trying to cater to, I guess a new audience because they're like,
those damn filthy casuals.
Who's watched the entirety of Rebels? Nobody.
Not many people, really. If you really talk to a lot of the modern Star Wars fans, I don't even know if it's because it's animated. I think a lot of people just didn't have time to sit through it. And it did have a scattered schedule. I mean, you don't really have an excuse now. It is on Disney Plus if you wanted to pick it up and watch it. But at the time when Rebels was at its peak, it wasn't really a consistent way of watching it unless you watched it. I think it was on Disney Plus at the time, I want to say. I don't even remember. Or not Disney Plus, Disney XD, whatever that channel was. Yeah, again, it wasn't an easily consistent way. But again, I think there is some really good lore building. I think there is something here. Thrawn, I'm really interested to see how they're going to make him a threat, because Thrawn is an interesting character where I think he's more threatening when he's on his ship causing like these space battle, big piece moves and stuff like that. So for him as a character, it's not like he's going to go and fight Ezra and Sabine or anything like that. That's kind of what more Balin and Shin Hati are for, his apprentice. I think that's what they're for. And that was probably, again, I have to keep saying it, they're the two most interesting characters in the entire show. Shin asks him, and I think that's really interesting, she asks Balin about what was it like to be part of the Jedi Order? Do you miss it? And he's like, yes, I kind of miss what it represented, but not what it became kind of idea. And there's a lot of really interesting facts. And again, guys, I have to keep saying, I think they really are super interesting with what they're trying to do here about exploring kind of the Jedi that have maybe fallen off the Order or have fallen out of favor of the Order. And I'm not talking about people that have become Sith, because they're obviously not Sith Lords, I think, at this point. They're just fallen Jedi, right? That's essentially what they are. They're just Jedi that don't follow the Order anymore. What do you think of that, Adam? Because I think that's probably the more interesting aspect of these characters.
Yeah, that is another very interesting aspect for me, because it's like anything can happen at this point with them. I could see them changing sides. I can also see them continuing, down the dark side path. I don't know. It also doesn't bode well for their longevity of their lives, because I don't see that ending very well. But who knows?
No, and again, they're kind of the pawns for Thrawn to use.
Right.
And that's,
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
kind of what Thrawn's big, he is a master. He's kind of like the master chess player. He's the strategist. He's the one who puts everything into motion. Like, he saw these events like 1,000 moves ahead, and he's already got another 1,000 more even after that ready to move.
Right.
And that's the supremacy of his character here, which we're starting to see that. And I like how he's kind of already ready, jumped right in there and engaged with everybody. Like, he's ready, like, okay, well, you're disposable. I can move you. I need you to stay with me because you're very important. And we got to get this interesting. They're removing something from the crypts on the planet. They didn't go into too much detail about what that was, but I am very curious on what that has to do with the plot. I think that will be something here. But before we wrap up, the only other thing I want to talk about is, again, at the beginning of the episode, our main character, who the show's titled after, Ahsoka, does make an appearance. I know she does make a small appearance in the episode, but she has a really interesting scene that I actually really enjoyed with Huang, where they talk about some of the past stories of the Jedi Order, where she's like, "Oh, tell me a story about the Jedi Order." He's like, "Oh, I have volumes 1 through 3. I can tell you about the Jedi." And she's like, "Oh, well, I've heard all those stories." And he says to her, "Why don't you tell me a story?" And she kind of defaults back on that. And again, I think it's just very telling of her character and how far her character has come, especially from, the beginning of Rebels and the beginning of Clone Wars, even up until now, where we've seen such an evolution of her character. And she's still, even though she's kind of overcome her demons, she's still struggling with some of the demons that she's had with the Jedi Order. Julie, what did you think of that episode? I thought it was really well done, even if it was only a very short scene.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably one of my favorite parts of the episode, was their interaction as they're, traveling through space. And it just goes, even comparing that to Balin and Shin's conversation, just the sorrow that continuously follows the Jedi, and how it is just a repeating cycle of, rebellion and empire, and that back and forth where you're watching people around you just fall, and your numbers dwindling. So it was an interesting way to start the episode, and more character development on Ahsoka's part. So I'm glad we got that one scene with her and her show.
Her one scene in her show, yeah. But again, I think it's interesting how tragic the Jedi are as characters when they're supposed to represent the kind of the light of the galaxy, kind of the law and order of guiding everyone and being happy. But realistically, and then if we even look to the future in the sequel series that we got, the cycle still continues even after the events here, because that is canon, so things are still going to continue on as we see. There'll always be a new empire. There'll always be new rebels to overcome that empire. The cycle doesn't end, and I don't even know if there really is an ending, because even at the end of the next, the sequel series after this, we don't know what happens after that movie. Disney hasn't decided yet. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the cycle probably will unfortunately still continue in some capacity. So you have Ahsoka, who's kind of mourning the past, and you have Balin, who's kind of looking towards the future of how can I truly stop this cycle from happening? And if it means I have to do bad things to get there, I'm willing to do it, whatever it takes. And again, I think that's a really interesting dynamic, maybe the most interesting dynamic in the show. But again, you're creating two different shows, I think, in my opinion, where you have kind of what me and Adam are saying. We have a Rebels sequel about all the Rebels characters and what they're doing. And then you have this Ahsoka series, which is kind of what this show should be, since it's called Ahsoka, where maybe the conflicts of the Jedi Order about the past and the present and the future maybe would have been more interesting to explore separately from one another and not in the same series, because I don't think they're really two cohesive units, honestly. But that all being said, I think I'm ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give Ahsoka episode 6, Far, Far Away, an 8.3 out of 10.
On second thought, tell me one of those stories. Your choice.
Very well. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
I had a fine time with this episode. I don't think it's really terrible. I think it did a lot of really great things for Star Wars. The lore building is always my favorite aspect of Star Wars, and we continue to see that here, so that's really exciting. Thrawn, I think, is fantastic, especially because he is practically in makeup. He's intimidating looking. He's got a presence about him. His stormtroopers are really awesome. If you like specially designed stormtroopers, those are action figures waiting to happen. I mean, they're probably already out by now. That doesn't even happen, but they look good. That's what Star Wars does. We sell toys. Ezra, it's fine. He showed up. I can't wait to see what they kind of do with him now that we've built up this character. And we're coming to an end. We got 2 more episodes to wrap this up. Again, don't feel like this should have been a series. It really should have been a movie. I think we would have been better paced, but it is what it is. We have what we have. This is a decent show. This is a deepest episode of Star Wars, and I had a good time. So that's all I really got to say. Adam, how about you? What did you think of this one?
I'm going to give episode 6 of Ahsoka, Far, Far Away, an 8.
As you get older, look at history. You realize it's all inevitable. Fall of the Jedi, rise of the Empire. It repeats again and again and again.
And isn't it our turn now? Won't our alliance with Thrawn finally bring us into power?
That sort of power is fleeting. What I seek is the beginning. So I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
I think that now we finally have solidified where the show is going. I think that the characters are now kind of in their proper places. I think that, Ahsoka is finally coming out of her shell. She's showing more of her character. Hopefully Sabine is, on the right path now. Hopefully for Julie's sake.
I hope so.
And, obviously now we have Thrawn and Ezra back. So I have hopes for the remainder of the series, I should say.
Yeah, the problem is, though, we got 2 episodes left. So I think that's where we that's where we may run into a problem. But I agree with you. I think the key players are here. So we have a lot of excitement to come along. I think we're really going to have some awesome Star Wars coming.
I think if anything, it'll probably, if I had to take a guess, it'll tie into like a season 2 announcement.
Well, I know there is. I don't know if we didn't really talk about this. I know there is an Heir to the Empire movie planned. That's what has been told. Dave Filoni will be doing that. So
interesting.
I'm gonna put my money on it. I think this is tying into it some way. The heir to who's gonna inherit the Empire. So
right.
We'll see what happens. But Julie, how about you? What do you think of this one?
I'm going to be giving Ahsoka episode 8, Far, Far Away, a flat 8 out of 10 as well.
I knew I could count on you.
Overall, I felt like for me, the episode felt a little long. And I think that goes back to our pacing issues with the series as a whole, where they're, spending a lot of time biting for time. But as Adam said, a lot of the pieces are now in place to have a successful climax to the show. I'm glad that we finally do have Thrawn and Ezra. It didn't hit exactly the way I was hoping it would for me as an outsider. But at least we have those key players here now. The biggest detractor for me, of course, was Sabine and her performance. But, alas, we move on.
Last we move on and we talk about how Sabine can't act in Julie's favorite part of the show there. I just really wish this was more condensed. I think there is a lot of really good things about this Ahsoka miniseries that they've created. It's just too long. Some things lend itself to a movie or a series and some things don't. I don't think this particularly did. And if Dave Filoni had other ideas of what he wanted to do with the continuation of Rebels, I think I would have rather just seen that instead of kind of shoehorning this Ahsoka tie-in series, and that's what it feels like overall. I don't know if you guys get that same vibe, but I felt like he was able to get Ahsoka approved, or, they approved the Ahsoka story ahead of time, and then they said, well, why don't we just kind of put the backdoor Rebels story in here so I can kind of wrap that up instead of having to do another series, or maybe there was another series planned and it got tied into this. Disney's kind of in turmoil right now, so I don't know if they really know what they're doing with their franchises. Things get canceled, reshuffled. This feels like it kind of suffers from that. I mean, we'll know more in the future once we kind of, carry on throughout the universe and see what other stories they decide to tell. But right now, again, I think it is enjoyable if it is just a little bit messy. But what I want to know is in the comments below what you guys think. Did you enjoy this episode? Are you finally happy to see Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra Bridger return to the Star Wars universe in their live action forms? I'm pretty excited, not gonna lie. Even if I'm a little down on it a little bit, I'm still happy to see them show up, and I think there is some exciting Star Wars to tell. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Let me know how you think the show is going to continue on, what stories we have to look forward to. Just leave a comment and a like on this video. But as I said, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin, that's Adam and Julie. We are your real movie guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you guys next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.